Chapter 13. Sauron broods a bit. Sauron was displeased with himself. He couldn't remember the last time he had done something that was helpful, and he'd just ruined his record. He was not very fond of ruining things. Well, at least his things. He could really care less about ruining things for other people. In fact, that had been his number one priority for a long, long time. It was all the stupid elf's fault. If only he was a bit more cheery and light-hearted like Elhith, or at least a bit happy like most elves, then there wouldn't really be any problems. However, Sauron wasn't used to dealing with elves who had attitudes like Haldir's, and it had tripped him up and made him have a brain lapse. Unfortunately, he realized that he'd been in a lapse pretty much since he'd gotten out of Mandos. He'd even gone so far as to tell that stupid elf that he didn't really feel like offing him, which was one of those things that Dark Lords weren't supposed to tell people. You keep those things secret. If people think that they're in a situation where their well-being is at stake, they will comply with about anything. However, you tell them that they aren't really in too much danger and they get out of hand. Sauron didn't like not having control. He had to have control of everything so that he could order it as he saw fit, which probably had a lot to do with why he'd gotten into the whole take over the world thing in the first place. Now, though, things were completely out of his control, and it was driving him nuts. He contemplated on whether that was what was making him act so oddly, that he didn't even have a smidgen of authority. Everything just always kept going down. Nothing ever looked up for him. He figured that he should have realized that just when he thought he had finally won for good, that something would happen and he would be defeated. That was what had always happened, without exception. And to add insult to injury, it was always in some really degrading way, as Feanor had pointed out.
I have to have the worst luck of anybody ever,
he thought to himself as they walked under the ark, completely convinced that there wasn't anybody that had it worse off than him. However, after a moment of reflection, he supposed that Turin probably had taken it a bit more. Hey, but at least he was able to die and just get it over with. Not that Sauron was actually sure what happened when men died, but he figured it would be better than what he was in for. He distinctly remembered when Morgoth had been sentenced to 3 ages completely alone in Mandos. Well, actually he hadn't known the details for a very long time, but he had expected that being taken prisoner would logically be followed by being put in a prison or something. Morgoth had told Sauron all about it once he returned. He never had really been the same after that, though, always a bit off, which Sauron figured having 3 ages with only yourself to talk to could do. That being the case, he wasn't too keen on seeing what would happen to him. He hadn't been too keen on the idea 2 ages ago either, when Morgoth had been overthrown and Yonwe had come to take him to be brought before the Valar. By this time, however, his list of horrific deeds had grown over 2-fold, and what he would have been afraid to get way back when would probably look pretty nice compared to what he would receive now. Besides the fact that he dreaded the outcome of the trial, seeing ages upon ages spent there forced to heal the hurts that he had caused the world, there was the fact that he was completely and utterly terrified of the Valar. After that battle, he had really repented for a while, but only because he'd been totally freaked out, having forgotten their power and grandeur, and by now he'd pretty much forgotten again. However, he remembered that it must have been great for him to have reacted the way he had. To make matters worse, of the Ainur he was the lesser degree, a Maya, and as that stupid elf had pointed out, he had served another before Morgoth, and he was sure that Aule would not be very happy with him. He felt sick to his stomach, worse than he had on that boat. It was just lovely that when he finally had a body for the first time in a long while, that he only felt cold and wet and as though his stomach was about to explode. It was just great. Although he had never been in Valinor before, he knew that they were very close to the Mahanaxar thing. He could feel it, a charge in the air which didn't do anything good for his nerves. Quickly, he tried to rid himself of all of his anxieties so that he could have some semblance of dignity before them. Tried to screw up some of that pride that he had always had, so that hopefully they would not realize how apprehensive he was. Such an appearance wouldn't be well liked. However, he knew that he was already doomed, so it didn't make any difference how he went down. He might as well appear undaunted. Another arch was before them now, this one gated. As they came, the gate pulled back, although there didn't seem to be anybody to open it, and with the light that came through, Sauron felt a throb of power which just about made him gag.
I'm guessing we're there,
he said softly. The elves turned around but did not reply.
"Stay here,"
one of them commanded with a threatening glare, which honestly didn't make Sauron feel that threatened. The two elves now walked under the arch. Sauron considered going on too, if only to make them mad, but then decided that he needed a moment more to put up his facade. As he stood there, he could hear them speaking, and he waited for the imminent summon for him to enter. He didn't have to wait long. He only half recognized the voice which spoke.
"Bring him in."